Greetings, everyone. I'm Mar. Once again, this is my opinion. As you can tell from the title up there, I'm continuing my trek through the episodes of Everybody Loves Raymond. We're on episode 9 of season 7. This is She Is the One. This is another one that I did see in syndication at least once. Started watching it a lot more on the DVD like some other episodes. And always been a favorite, even though it does kind of have a very weird plot, but some of the fun episodes here do kind of have weird plots, even if they are semi-relatable, and this is definitely one of those ones where you find somebody that you think is perfect, or feel is perfect, I should say, for you, and then one weird little flaw comes up, and it's not like how they discussed flaws in the past. It's a weird thing where you're like, yeah, that's a deal breaker. So this episode is the epitome of she's a 10, but before I get too far into the review, just a reminder, if you want to support the channel, both the Patreon and PayPal links are down below. If you want to do a one-off support or one-off request, go the PayPal route. If you want to continuously support the channel, gain access to videos early, and be able to request topics of future videos, go the Patreon route. Either way, your support is appreciated. Now, in the context of the show, storyline-wise, it's been a while since Robert has had somebody. I guess you could say he's been on his Eeyore pity pot for a while, which makes sense. I mean, last time he was with somebody was when he had the 3 situation, or at least seriously. And, ups and downs since then, especially in the recent episodes where he's not had a lot of money, so can't really support it. Here, though, he mentions that he met somebody through an accidental double booking with a barber, Angela, who is played in this episode by Elizabeth Bogusch, if I'm pronouncing her last name correctly. It's Bogush. And he's the one that even tells Ray and Deborah, like, I'm getting a slight feeling. And of course, they're both happy for him. Deborah's happy. Ray's happy in his own Ray way. He's teasing him a little bit. Like, he married one that wasn't the one. And because of this, Robert wants to take it slowly, ease things into it. But he wants them to meet her, but he doesn't want the family to meet her. But the lucky thing for them is that Frank and Marie are going to Atlantic City for a couple days, so perfect time for them to come over and have dinner. They come over, they have fun. They're talking about it. And Angela, we can tell from the get-go, is a lovely woman. Educated, good conversationalist. She speaks multiple languages, including Italian, because one of her parents are Italian. So she fit into the family pretty well. Everything seems like it's going good. Then all of a sudden, the fly comes in for the dinner. Angela kills it. And then, this is the she's a 10 but moment. While Robert and Deborah are in the kitchen getting dessert stuff ready, Ray sees Angela eat the fly, which for this, the fly was a raisin, which you can pretty much tell, but she eats it. And the way that Ray Romano sells this as he's watching her, it is the epitome of Booker T's line in professional wrestling, tell me I didn't just see that, to paraphrase it. He's looking at it like, what the? And of course, Ray, you can imagine the character, he's trying to digest what he just saw and trying to process it in a way to tell his wife and his brother. Of course, obviously when he does tell her, eventually you can imagine they do not believe her, because that's the most ridiculous thing you can say. Robert, of course, is going to have his reasons for not believing Ray. Like, really, Raymond? This too, you're going to try to take away one thing like this? And of course, Deborah's like, really? You're going to be jealous of your brother now for this? Really? You're going to say there, she sat there and ate a fly? And because of this, Robert and Angela leave, and this is after Frank and Marie show back up because they were escorted from the casino, which, of course, work in casino security now. I can't help but giggle a little bit at this. And you want to know why they were kicked out of the casino? Because Frank got mad that the machines were not paying out, and he threw a roast beef sandwich at the machine. Now, based on what you can get kicked out of a casino for, I think there's probably a little bit more to that. He probably was creating a scene verbally and then threw it at him, and then that's when security asked him to leave. Which, I can understand the frustration not winning, but it's one of those things like, just because you're mad you're not winning, Doesn't mean you can take it out on the machines. Luckily, just throwing a sandwich at a machine is small compared to it. It could have been worse for Frank. He could have ended up owing the casino more money by damaging the machine. Which, if anyone's going to try to argue, like, yeah, he doesn't have to. Punching a machine, hitting a machine, or doing anything else to it to where you damage the machine to where it cannot play anymore is vandalism. So don't try to even say anything with that. Now, Robert and Angela go back to her apartment. Everything looks like it's going to go towards the moment. Then Robert goes into her bedroom, and it is filled with frogs. So that alone tells Robert, like, oh God, Ray's right. And what really sells it is this one shot where you see Robert like this, that is shot through an aquarium. You see a frog in there, and then it does a close-up on a frog, which I don't know if they shot that themselves, but something about the way it's shot kind of tells me it was a stock recording they had of that same type of frog. And it goes ribbit. And then Robert tries to sneak out the window. Angela comes in, and she's like, oh yes. Always the same. The moment they find my frogs, they think I'm the weird one. Which, of course, it is. I mean, if you're going to eat a fly, yeah, that is weird. Having frogs is fine. Now, she does kind of go a little bit to the overboard point, because just looking at her room, I'm like, you have a couple aquariums at the foot of your bed, which, for an example, with how I'm recording this with the setup, that would be for me, like, right here. Having aquariums on a stand at the end, like, yeah, that would take up a little bit too much room. And for what was probably going to happen, you might knock one of them over. So, there's that. Robert goes back to Ray and Deborah's house, and he lets everybody know that Ray was right, and Ray, of course, is like, aha! Now, Ray's the only one that ends up believing Robert. Everyone else doesn't. Like, even Marie going on it, which, on one hand, it's nice to see Marie actually call Ray out on something for once, but on the same time, it's something that actually happened, that we, the audience, knows it happened. So it's one of those things like, really, Marie? You pick now of all times to not believe and stand by Ray for what he does? I mean, there's been a couple other times where she did it, like when she smacked Ray for his misogyny. But here, like, yeah, not the right time. And to tie in with it, Marie starts her whole thing about talking to Robert, trying to be understanding and be like, are you sure you're not homosexual? It's like, really, Marie? They went over this a couple seasons ago. Robert has said he's not gay. In which I know there's a whole thing about maybe he could be a repressed gay, doesn't realize he is and all that, but Robert's made it pretty clear. And the reason I'm going with it and being on Robert's side with it is Marie's whole reasoning for it, like mentioning like you're in your 40s, you can't settle down, trying to be supportive with all the slogans, even though you kind of say it's kind of like the half support thing where she'll still silently judge, just try to accept, which I guess in some circumstances is better than the alternative of being the hellfire and brimstone, or like how Frank reacted with the milk carton being like, but even then it's like that fake nice of hers. But it's like, he mentioned he's not gay. He has no reason to believe that he is gay. So why are we going back into this? I mean, it fits Marie's character, but it's one of those things like, really, Marie? It does lead into the part of this episode that really hits right here. And it's definitely one aspect of this episode that has aged like wine since I first saw this episode when I was younger. And it's a good example of how a sitcom, even though it's written primarily for funny entertainment, when it wants to get serious and tackle something, it can. Now, it's not to the same degree as something like MASH, but it's there. And it's one of those little life lessons about relationships and all that. Now, it is with the line that Robert says. And this is a little monologue that has been making the round on TikTok, so if you're on TikTok, you've probably seen a clip of this edited with music, but this is the monologue. Going from after he's done the segue from the whole "are you gay" conversation. I really wish I had a reason why I was always striking out. But I don't. It's me. It's me. Most people find their other half. But I'm just going to have to accept that there maybe is no other half. for this. Now, what sells it is not only the writing, but it's the way that Brad Garrett sells the monologue, the way he enunciates the words, his facial expressions, and of course with the before and after, how he works off Doris Roberts and everyone else in the scene. And it's just that line. It's one of those ones that as you get older and you're not with anybody, whether you're not married, you're not dating or anything, it's something that hits right here. Especially when it seems like a lot of the strikeouts have to do with some of your issues, whether they be mutual in one relationship or mainly yours in another. You start to feel that line the older you get. Now, some people stay single by choice, but if you're trying to find somebody like Robert has, and you're unsuccessful in the long term, you start to really feel that line. And what really adds to this is how everybody acts after Robert gets up to go, where they're all like, Robbie. I mean, even Frank, even though you can kind of feel it's a little too late there to try to be a supporting dad, Frank, but at least he's trying, like, hey, son. Now, well, this is a good moment that really hits here, tackles a good subject. The epilogue does temper it a little bit, so I'm going to have to mention this. If this is where the episode ended and they carried forth this whole thing for like a couple episodes, it would have been a good impact. But with how the storyline involving Robert progresses after this, it'd be kind of hard to imagine. Where would they go with this? Well, for that, it's probably a nice little low point for Robert before he starts to go up following this. Because, like I mentioned, the last time we mentioned Amy, about sports bars. Because Robert, after he changes and dries from the rain and all that, he goes to a sports bar. Looks like he's going to drown his sorrows. And of course, he's not thinking and all that, so he's at the bar, he turns, he's looking at the crowd while beginning to drink. He has his legs out. Now remember, Robert's a big guy. Me at 6'4", I have to be careful sometimes with this to make sure I don't accidentally have my legs out to where someone could trip. Robert is a couple inches taller than me still, so there's that. He trips a drink server. The drink server goes crashing into a table, and who happens to be at the table that takes the full front of the drinks? Amy, Robert's ex. And she gets covered with it, and then Robert notices she's there, and she's like, and he's looking at her with concern, like, Amy. He doesn't say anything. That's what makes this last part beautiful. And Amy, of course, they're all trying to dry her. She's like, oh God, I'm so embarrassed. And then she looks up and sees Robert, and they're looking at each other, and it's cutting back and forth between looking at him. Not one word is exchanged between the two of them, but you can already tell where the story's going with this before it fades to black and the credits begin, and you're like, oh yeah. Nice little bit of visual storytelling with the editing and the acting on the facial expressions there. And of course, to cut a little bit to the chase, yes, they do end up together again after this. This is the last time they get together, because after this they are together until the end of the show, and at the end of this season we finally get Robert and Amy being married. Now, a little touch on this, I'll probably save a little bit more of this for the wedding two-parter, but as I've mentioned before, I really hated how many times they had him go on the horse, off the horse, on the horse, off the horse. So to finally see them back on the horse for good, nice little thing there. Even though, I think I've probably mentioned back in the season 4 reviews, most of that is in a retrospect from watching it on DVD. Now, there is a little bit of trivia here. Like some of the best dynamic episodes. This one is based on a real-life incident that occurred, but it happened to Ray Romano's brother. He fled out the window of a woman he met at a bar when he saw she had a bizarre obsession with snakes and the occult. So I think you can kind of see what he was thinking, like, oh, crap. That was good. Which I know I was going to bring it up later about Peter Boyle's health here. Here I'm starting to notice a little bit of a dip in energy. I mean, it's still up, but it's not as noticeable as it's going to be by the end of the season. But you can start to see he still has that energy, but it's starting to go down a bit. Just a tad. For the moment where Ray is explaining to his wife and brother about the whole Angela eating the fly, While filming that, Ray nearly passed out. He was standing with a shocked expression on his face for 3 minutes, and then he had to yell out the phrase, "and then she ate it." He started to feel lightheaded, but managed to stay awake and in character. And funny enough, Ray was also one of the co-writers for this episode, so that probably also explains some of the good stuff. And then the last one I already talked about. As you could probably guess from how I've been gushing with this episode, this is definitely on my recommendations and must-watch list. If you're going to just skip through episodes of Season 7, this is one you shouldn't skip. I mean, it is in syndication for a reason. And definitely on the much-watched list if you're going to do like a specific, let's say, playlist of episodes about Robert and Amy, this definitely is on there. Even though it's only the last scene that focuses on that, you have to have that setup of Robert getting to his low before he goes back up to his high. And all in all, fun episode. Will definitely be on the VHS list somewhere once I get around to compiling that. And of course, the next episode is another one that I've always enjoyed from syndication. And that is, of course, going to be about another one thing that is a family dynamic that involves getting older, and that is changing vision. Because the next one is about Marie's vision. Till next time, guys.